if you are waiting for someone else to tell you that you're valued in your role as dad, if you're waiting for someone else to tell you, man, you're doing a great job in your role as a dad, then you are outsourcing your entire fatherhood journey. So today's talk is just about that. How can we look inside ourselves, use our own inner metrics to feel validated in our role as fathers, as opposed to seeking it from the external world? And today's talk was inspired by a prompt in my Mindful Fatherhood Journal called the 365 Dad Journal. The first thing I want to tell you is identity precedes your outcomes, right? So your identity and how you are perceiving yourself is going to precede, right, your outcome. So what that means is if I am telling myself I'm only going to be a good dad, or I'm only a good dad, a great father, when someone else acknowledges that for me, that means that my whole fatherhood identity is wrapped up in external validation. So the moment I do something that I think is grand or just amazing as a dad, and I don't get that external validation, my total identity as a good dad is now gone, because now I feel like I'm a bad dad. You feel like you're a bad dad because you didn't get that external validation. So how are you perceiving yourself, right? That's going to precede the outcome that you really want. I'm going to give you a really good example of this. This happens all the time with me, with my son and my daughter, because they both live pretty far away from me right now. So my son lives about an hour and 10 minutes away from me as of a year and a half ago. And we still keep the same visitation schedule, right? Have a Monday, Thursdays, and every other weekend. So for me to be an hour and 10 minutes away from him, it takes me a trek of a journey after work, to go get him and things like that. So recently, he started a new basketball season and his practice is at 7 p.m. I ran late after work. I'll call his mom and I go, hey, I know I'm supposed to come up there usually by like 5:30, spend a couple hours with him, take him to practice, eat dinner with him, but I won't get to you until almost 7 o'clock, which is when his practice starts. And she's like, okay, no problem. I'll have him eat here and, you can come up and see him at practice. So I do that. I drive an hour and 10 minutes to watch him practice for an hour and speak to him for maybe 5 minutes as we walk back to the car. And, he went with his mom. So basically what happened was I drove an hour and 10 minutes to look at my son practice and only speak to him for 5 minutes. And then had to turn around and drive another hour and 10 minutes back home without him. So that is a lot in my opinion, in my eyes. But this is what we got to do what we have to do. But now the problem is sometimes stuff like this happens all the time with me since I've recently moved, right? And I'm like, yo, his mom never gives me any credit. His mom never acknowledges any of the effort I do. And I sometimes can get caught in this trap of wrapping my identity based around that. And the reality is, who matters the most? For me to drive an hour and 10 minutes to watch him practice and talk to him for 5 minutes, whose opinion matters the most? Is it someone else's or is it my son's? It's my son. So if he appreciates me being there, which I know he does, that's all that should matter. So to me, even though he's an external source, that's a different level of external source, right? Because this is who I'm doing it for, So, and I'll give you another example. I remember I was at his basketball practice and I was talking to another dad about his games. And he goes, are you going to be there? I go, of course. It wasn't even my weekend with him, but I'm like, of course I'm going to be there. It was 8 o'clock start, woke up 6 o'clock to get there on time. And he goes, man, you're such a great dad. And in that moment, I felt really grateful for that compliment. But I'm thinking to myself, like, did I need him to say that to validate me being a good father? And this is what we're talking about here. That was great. I appreciated that compliment, but how can I use my own inner metrics? How can I use my own KPIs to measure success and not based off of what somebody else is thinking? Because remember, if I already tell myself my identity is a good dad, right? That's who I am. I'm a good father, and that's how I choose to walk around viewing myself. Then whatever happens underneath good father, ups and downs, highs and lows, peaks and valleys, it doesn't matter because my identity is wrapped up in being a good dad based off of my own perception. So remember, your identity precedes your outcomes. All right. So the next thing I always say is just assume that you're super valued, right? That's all you really have to do. If this video can get shut down and you only have to hear 15 seconds of it to solve this issue, just remember to assume that you are already highly valued and a present father. That's all you have to do is assume that you're valued. Assume that your influence matters to who? Your child, because once again, that's the only person who truly matters, your children. So just walk around already knowing and already feeling like you are extremely valued to them in your role. Another trap that I fall into, I'm sure if you're being honest with yourselves, you can relate to this, is social media. People love to tell me how great of a father I am on Instagram and Facebook when I post videos of my children. I'll post us doing things, and I'll be lying to you if I said a part of that didn't make me feel good about myself. Then you start posting more and more because you want that external validation. Sometimes there are things I do with my children where I'm like, I don't even want to post this on Facebook. I don't even want to post this on Instagram, right? Some things are meant just for us. Some experiences are meant just for us. But I've fallen into the trap of sending out a cute video of my daughter online because in my mind, I'm thinking, it's going to get validated. Someone's going to validate me. And I hate that loop. I really do. Like, because at the end of the day, especially if you take my daughter, for instance, she's 3 years old. They're so pure at that age. Imagine if she had a way of knowing, like, my dad is posting me on Instagram because he wants external validation because for some reason he doesn't feel good about his role as a father. It's kind of wild if you think about it that way, right? So get out of the social media trap. You know, sometimes I do things with my kids and I'm like, I'm not posting this. And that's very intentional. Like the way I post my children on social media, sometimes you look at it and you would think, wow, I feel like he has his kids 100% of the time, right? Because I post them so much. And sometimes when I get really intentional, you may think, dang, I forgot he had kids. And that's because I'm trying to keep our experiences here and not just putting them on the platforms, right? I'm purposely trying to curate a bond with my kids that is not being defined based on how you all view it or how they all view it online. So that's something for you to think about when it comes to this external validation in your role is getting out of the social media trap. Please get out of that trap, right? And another thing you could do is practicing non-attachment to the likes, the views, the compliments. Really practice non-attachment to that. How are you feeling when someone says, man, you're a great dad? Do you take that and now base your whole identity off of hearing someone telling you that? Or do you acknowledge it? Thank you. I appreciate that. And I'm not attached to that, right? This is something I'm working on. I could be better at this, but it's an intentional thing of mine to work on hearing someone in the external world tell me I'm a great dad and just not being attached to that. Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm a work in progress, right? I'm still acknowledging the compliment, but I'm not holding it so tight because as I always tell you in any other video, when you hold it so tight, right? Anything that has to do with your role as a dad, when you hold it so tight, when life shows you anything that looks like the opposite, your whole world is now crushed. Your whole world is now crushed, right? So don't be too attached to what people on the external world is saying, all right? Another thing to keep in mind is, is your inner child searching for gold stars? That's how I like to put it, right? Is your inner child searching for gold stars, right? Maybe when you were growing up, you didn't get a lot of compliments that you felt like you deserved. Maybe you tried to really impress your parents and they were so busy with work, they were so busy with their own thing, they never even acknowledged what a great job you're doing. And maybe you only got that acknowledgement from the outside world, from teachers, classmates, when you really only wanted it from the people who you love the most. And maybe they didn't give that to you. So it could be possible that a lot of you, and I know I was included in this, I'm included in this group of fathers who seeked this confirmation from my parents and I never really got it, right? I excelled at 3 sports in high school, excelled at them. I was a really good student, but I never got that affirmation. I never got that gold star from my parents. It was almost like, all right, next up, move on to the next thing. So that's something for you to keep in mind. Is your inner child, still searching for gold stars? And if your inner child is still searching for gold stars, how do you give yourself those gold stars internally? Yourself, right? Not someone else. How do you give them to yourself? And that's what this is all about. All right. So the next thing we're going to do before we wrap up, I'm going to give you a framework called an AIM framework. Everything with me and anything I do with clients or any type of fatherhood workshop I do, there's always going to be an acronym involved. So just make sure you know that from the jump. All right. So AIM is basically a framework that you're going to use to validate your value internally as a father and not basing it off of the external world. So the A is going to be alignment. And when I say alignment, that means, are you aligned with your core values as a dad? So for example, I always teach this. Have 3 core values as a father, right? What are yours? So mine is going to be patience, right? Honesty and presence. Presence, patience, honesty, however you want to flip them. PPH. Those are mines and mine. And now when I say mine are presence, I'm talking about emotional, physical, mentally. When your kids are getting on your last nerve, are you able to breathe and just recollect yourself, regulate your nervous system a bit before you jump back and respond, right? Before you jump back and react, are you able just to take a deep breath and have some patience? And honesty is, that is just the ability to be very, very vulnerable with your children. Hey, I don't know. Or, hey, son, I'm really going through it today and I'm very emotional. Work was tough for me. I feel overwhelmed right now. Be very honest and open. So those are my 3 core values. So what I do is I say, am I living in alignment with those values? So at the end of the night, if I say, I showed up for my children physically, emotionally, mentally, then guess what? I'm in alignment. And that's all that matters. Not what Facebook says, not what Instagram says, not what my son's co-parent says, not what your spouse says. None of that matters when it comes to this thing. It's about, are you living in alignment with your values as a dad? So that's going to be the A in AIM is alignment. The next thing is going to be I, and that's integrity. So speaking of, are you living in alignment? Prove it. So write down some things, say some things out loud. What are you doing to live in alignment? We got to have some integrity about this. So you need to see that visual proof that I am actually living in alignment. When my son pissed me off to the most pissed offs I can get to, I actually smiled and I actually took a breath and we worked through that together. These are things that actually can happen. When my daughter went absolutely apeshit, I was able to lift her up, put her on my lap, and talk to her in a tone that calmed her down. Integrity. And the M is going to be metrics, but these are going to be internal metrics, right? Are my children, happy? Are my children smiling? Are they laughing? Do they trust me? Can they have conversation with me? Am I showing up for them? So these are all internal metrics that you can use to kind of put the stamp of approval that, yo, I'm a dad that is doing a good job. So that's it for today. Thank you all for always tuning in and listening to me rant about mindful fatherhood. I think it's something that if we continue to talk about, I promise you it's going to break generational cycles. And you all are watching this are going to be on the forefront of that. So I appreciate you all. And as always, you can check out my resources and links in the description. Subscribe to the Inner Dad Journey newsletter. Check out the 365 Dad Journal. And yeah, I'm just very pleased and very happy to be able to give this information to you all. Until next time.